All right, let's jump right in. We're always told, learn from your mistakes, right? But what does that even mean in practice? Well, today we're going to get into something really fascinating. The huge difference between how most of us react when we fail and how the highest performers use it to literally get smarter. But first, let's be real, nobody likes being wrong. It just feels bad. It stings. It can feel like a direct hit, a judgment on how smart we are. But what if that feeling, that very sting, is the thing that's actually holding us back from getting better? So that gut reaction, that negative feeling, there's a name for it, the error trap. And it's this psychological pitfall that so many of us fall into. It doesn't just hurt for a second, it can actually keep us stuck. So think about it. When you mess up, what's your first instinct? For most of us, it's to get defensive, right? Or maybe just pretend it never happened. And there's a good reason why. It's all about protecting our ego. See, we're taught our whole lives that being right means we're smart. So when we make a mistake, man, it feels like a personal shot at who we are. But here's the kicker. When you're all hunched over protecting yourself like that, there's absolutely no way you can learn a thing. And that leads to this vicious cycle. You make a mistake, you feel attacked, so your brain just wants to ignore it and move on. But because you ignore it, you totally miss the lesson that was hiding in there. And what happens when you miss the lesson? Well, you're pretty much guaranteed to make that exact same mistake again later. It's a loop that just keeps us from growing. But here's the good news. There is a much, much better way. And that brings us to a totally different way of thinking, one where we stop seeing our mistakes as these big, scary threats and start seeing them as valuable assets. It's like a software upgrade for your brain. And this slide, this is the whole game right here. The typical reaction is that a mistake feels like a personal attack. But the smart reaction, it's seeing that very same mistake as just a piece of data. That's it. So the goal isn't to ignore it or defend your ego anymore. The goal is to simply review the data and see what you can learn. And this whole approach has a name. It's called error-based learning. And it's not some fuzzy concept. It's a real process. It's all about intentionally using your mistakes as the fuel, as the raw material to build a smarter, more accurate way of seeing things. This is so important. The smartest people, the highest performers, they don't necessarily fail any less than the rest of us. The difference is, they are absolute masters at engineering the learning from their failures. They've literally built a system to squeeze every last drop of value out of every single time they get it wrong. So you might be asking, okay, how? How do they actually do that? What's the secret tool they're using? Well, it all boils down to one powerful skill, metacognition. Metacognition sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. It just means thinking about your thinking. It's the ability to kind of step outside of your own head for a second and just observe your own thought process. It's about asking, why did I think that was the right move? Or what was the assumption I made that led me down this path? It's all about a calm, curious review, not a harsh judgment. I love this analogy. When you're practicing metacognition, you're not the one on trial. No, you're the detective who's been called to the scene. You're just calmly looking for clues, following the evidence, and trying to piece together what really happened inside your own brain. And this whole detective thing, you can actually break it down into 4 simple steps. First, and this is key, you just pause, stop, don't react, take a breath, and let that initial sting of emotion fade a little. Step 2, you question. You start asking, okay, what did I believe was true that led me here? Then you analyze. You look at the error like it's a puzzle to be solved, not some terrible disaster. And finally, the most important part, you update. You actually change your mental model for next time. So, where do we go from here? Look, the goal is not to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. The goal is to get better at being imperfect. Your next mistake isn't something you should be afraid of. It's actually your next chance to practice this whole process. This quote really says it all, doesn't it? It completely reframes what it means to be smart. Intelligence isn't something you just have. It's something you build. And you know what the building blocks are? Your own mistakes. And what you're building with every mistake you process this way is something called intellectual resilience. It's that ability to get knocked down by a tough problem or a bad decision and not just get back up, but get back up stronger and smarter than you were before. Every single error becomes a building block. So I want to leave you with this question. Think back to a recent mistake you made. Could be anything, big or small. What was the core assumption underneath it all that led you there? And now that you know all this, what's one assumption you're ready to start challenging in your own thinking, starting today?